Hello everyone. I welcome you all for the video lecture on basics of Python. In previous class we discussed about the conditional statements in Python, how to use it. Today's session is going to discuss about the looping statements. In Python we have while loops, for loops, for decision making. Loop control statements, nested loops are some of the loops in Python. The types of loops are of three: while loops, for loops, and do loops. Each loop requires the following steps: initialization and a condition. We need to specify the condition and it has to be a base condition, and we need to update the we need to iterate the values, and it has to meet the base condition. If it has to get false for one value for the loop terminate, and the required output will be printed. Loops are of two types: entry controlled and exit controlled. Entry controlled is for loop and while loop, and exit controlled is do while loop. The types of loops are for loop, repeat loop, and while loop. For loop iterates over the elements of any sequence till the condition defined is true. Infinite loop and used with the break statement to exit the loop. A while loop repeats a statement or group of statements until some condition is met. If we look at the for loop, the number of iterations are fixed and known in advance. Whereas in the repeat loop, the number of iterations depends on the condition which is checked at the end of each iteration. In while loop, the number of iterations depends on the condition which is checked at the beginning of each iteration. While loop is used to execute a block of statements repeatedly until a given condition is satisfied. And when the condition becomes false, the line immediately after the loop in the program is executed. The syntax for the while expression, uh, statements following the while expression. All the statements indented by the same number of character spaces after a programming construct are considered to be part of a single block of code. Python uses indentation as its method of grouping statements. The statements of the Python while loop are dictated by indentation. The code block begins with when a statement is indented or ends with the very first unindented statement. The flowchart explaining the while loop. When it enters the while loop, it checks for the expression. Well, when it is true, it executes the statements. When it is false, it exits the while loop statements and continue with the next line of code in the program. An example coding in Python is given here. We have I value 1 initialized to 1, and we have a expression for while expression I less than 6. So it will iterate from 1, and until this condition is true, it will the loop will be continuously running and it will print the values from 1 to 5. When it is 6 less than 6, it is false and comes out of the while statements. So we have the incrementation operator to I to make the iterations. So this is another example for printing the multiplication table of 12. So we can print the multiplication table using while loop. That is when we have a number 12 and a counter 1, we can do the multiplication table. We can print the multiplication table as given the program. While the counter is less than or equal to 10, and it includes the value 10 also, and we have the num 12 multiplied with the counter, which is actually going to get incremented mm, in our one of the statements in the while, and we will be printing that. So that is number 12 into counter 1 is equal to the answer. So the answer holds, this variable holds number into counter. So we have multiplication operation performed and we are printing that value. And once this program gets executed, we will be getting the multiplication table. So while loops in Python is simply you as we have seen, it is simply going to get the statements in the while loop gets executed until the conditions is met, and then do while loop. The do while construct consists of a process symbol and a condition. First, the code within the block is executed, then the condition is evaluated. If the condition is true, the code within the block is executed again. This repeats until the condition becomes false. Syntax: do uh, a while. Do has some statements to be get executed, and it checks for the condition in the while. When the condition in the while expression is true, then the statements in the do will get executed. So this is how the flowchart for do while follows. Initialization, group of statements, increment or decrement operator, while condition, if it is false, exit from the loop. When it is true, then it executes statements in the do. The do while is the while loop in Python first checks for the condition and then the block is executed if the condition is true. The block is executed repeatedly until the condition is evaluated to false. Thus, in Python, we can use a while loop with if break continue statements that are that are indented. But if we use do while, it does not fit the indentation rule. Therefore, we cannot use the do while loop in Python. Example: 1 is equal to 1, while true, print I is equal to I plus 1. If I greater than 5, break. For loop. So we don't have a do while in Python. We only have while, and next we are going to look up the for loop. A for loop is used for iterating over a sequence that is neither a list, a tuple, a dictionary, a set, or a string. The syntax for is for value in sequence and then the statements following it. This is the flow chart. Start for and the for will print. It will also have it is also having the condition to get met and then end. So this is fruits is equal to apple, banana, cherry. For x in fruits, print x. So this is the for loop syntax. We have used this in our program. Python for loop. A for loop is used for iterating over a sequence and iterables like range, list, a tuple, a dictionary, a set, or a string. Looping through a string. For x in a banana, print x. The output will look like this. And the break statement. Fruits is equal to apple, banana, and cherry. For x in fruits, print x. If x is equal to banana, break. So once if we have break statement, a loop gets terminated. But we have that in the if condition is if x is equal to banana. So when the variable x has the value banana, the if condition gets true and the break statement get executed, terminating the for loop. So the output ends with the banana. This is the flow chart explaining for loop, and this is break statement. So here we have if is x is equal to banana, you have a break, and then you are printing the values. So up to apple, the value gets printed. The continue statement. The continue statement in Python will continue the loop. So we have apple, cherry. So once if we have the x value banana, this continue will make the for loop to get executed, skipping print, so that banana value stored in x will not get printed. So output is apple and cherry. Then the range function. The range function returns a sequence of numbers starting from 0 by default and increments by 1 by default and ends at a specified number. For x in range 6, print x. So it starts from 0 and ends with the 5, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Using the start parameter for for x in range 2, comma 6, print x. 2 to 6 will not get printed, up to 5 will get printed. And then for x in range 2, comma 30, comma 3, when we print this, 3 with the 3 interval, the numbers get incremented and it will print up to 29. Else in for loop. The else keyword in a for loop specifies a block of code to be executed when the loop is finished. For x in range 6, print x, else print finally finished. So 0 to 5, finally finished. If the loop breaks, the else block is not executed for x in range 6. If x is equal to 3, break, print x is else, print finally finished. So look, when the value is equal to 3, it gets break and it comes out of the for loop, and we have 0, 1, 2. The pass statement is executed. Nothing happens when you avoid getting an error when empty code is not allowed. Empty code is not allowed in loops. Function definitions, class definitions, or NF statements. For xn 0, 1, 2 pass, having an empty for loop like this would raise an error without the pass statement. So when you have a for loop without these statements, then we can have pass statement to avoid errors. Then comes to the nested loop in Python. A nested loop is a loop inside the body of the outer loop. The inner or outer loop can be any type, such as a while loop or for loop. The outer loop can contain more than one inner loop. There is no limitation on the chaining of loops. In the nested loop, the number of iterations will be equal to the number of iterations in the outer loop multiplied by the iterations in the inner loop. In each iteration of the outer loop, inner loop execute all its iteration. For each iteration of an outer loop, the inner loop restart and completes its execution before the outer loop can continue it to its next iteration. So we are going to look at our nested loop. Nested loop means nesting a loop into another loop. So this is how it looks like for nesting a loop. For again, it is actually checking some conditions and printing values. Like that, we can have a for, and if we can have these things in Python. That's all for the session. Thank you all. Hope you enjoy the video. We will meet in another Python session. Thank you all.